guys, 'tis me, Julian Greystoke. Today I am wearing my Space Boyfriend shirt because we are going to talk about a book that takes place in outer space. That is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Now I know I'm way behind again. I always read these books after everyone else has read them, but I like to think that my sparkling personality keeps bringing you back. Now, first of all, you should know that I am not a huge lover of sci-fi books. I love sci-fi movies, I love sci-fi video games, but sci-fi books usually just aren't my thing. But I had heard that A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet was very accessible to people who do not read a lot of sci-fi, so I thought I would give it a chance. And yeah, I agree, because it does feel very accessible and easy to read, and that is mostly because it is incredibly character-focused. This book to me was Firefly meets Mass Effect meets Farscape. You have your plucky band of spaceship dwellers that live on this little ship, and they are in charge of punching wormholes through space essentially to facilitate faster space travel. They are just this like vulnerable little ball of people floating through space. As I said, this book is incredibly character-focused, and it does a much better job of it, in my opinion, than, say, Six of Crows, which was supposed to be very character-focused. If you want to check out my review of Six of Crows, links in the doobly-doo. While I liked all the members of the crew, and I was intrigued by them and their various stories, the way that this book went about revealing those stories was not perfect. If you have played Mass Effect 2, you know that it is the most character-focused of the bunch, and it has these things called loyalty missions where you get to go with your crewmen to find out their backstory or their story or their trauma and help them sort it out. This book felt a lot like that. Everything was sort of, what's your trauma? And your trauma? Interesting. I wish that they had meshed better together and had been less like just one right after the other. There are some action scenes in this book. They are tense, but they are very short and they are few and far between. I wish that when the action scenes had come, that they had stuck around longer and they had had a bigger impact. Often when the action scene was over, it was just sort of done and the characters went back about their lives for the most part. Sometimes there were more repercussions. Often they had to do with the character's trauma that would be sorted out later. The pacing of this book was incredibly slow, and that was intentional. But sometimes, even if something is super character driven, if the pacing is too slow, I have a hard time with it, and that was a little bit the case with this book. While I liked most of the characters, Dr. Chef and Sissix were my favorite. Dr. Chef for the win, fight me, he's awesome. One engineer, I forget his name, but interactions with the AI in the ship felt very much like Joker and Edie. What you should know about me is that I love Robot with a Soul stories, but the exploration of an AI through a love story is one that I've seen a lot and I'm kind of tired of, so I could have done without it personally. One character that didn't make a lot of sense to me was the guy who was in charge of algae, because the ship like ran on algae, and it was a cool concept, but he seemed mostly to be there to be the asshole. I also had a problem with these sexy aliens. The captain has a relationship with one of these aliens, and they are the token race of aliens that everyone finds sexually attractive. Everyone, no matter what your species. And I was like, why? Why are they here? I did, however, love the Captain and Sissix relationship. It reminded me of Mal and Zoe from Firefly. A sort of pseudo-message that was in this book that did bother me is that the people who were private and didn't like to be touched were sort of proven wrong for that by the end. This is something that probably only I noticed, because as a person, I don't like to be touched. I'm not really into touching, especially a stranger, especially unexpected touch. It's gonna trigger my anxiety like nobody's business. So I kind of related to these two characters, the navigator and the algae guy, because I don't remember their names, who were private, who were not into being touched, and then by the end of the story, they had supposedly learned and grown into people who were more tolerant of being touched and being around other people, and I found that just a little bit insulting, because it implies that like if you are a private person and you don't like being touched, you're wrong and you should learn to change and be like everyone else. I did listen to the audiobook version of this, and I felt like that while the narrator did a fine job, this really should have been a full cast audio, because there are too many characters and they are too different Nigel is here, for one narrator to manage on her own. I also feel like this book would make an even better TV show, and as I was reading, I kind of felt myself wondering why it wasn't a TV show, because it felt very episodic. Something else that I did notice is that all of these people, all of these different aliens, they can all eat the same food. They all eat the same food. That bothered me. Like, even in Mass Effect, where the aliens are the most original thing ever, they can't all eat the same food. Maybe in space, everybody, like, there's space food and everybody can just eat it, but I call bullshit on that. It was sweet to have these, like, dinners that Dr. Chef would make and they would all join in, but I felt it would have been more realistic if Dr. Chef would have had to make separate meals for each crew member. Now, this is a little bit of a spoiler. I won't tell you who, but there is a character that dies at the end, and I was a little bit mad that the author didn't kill more people. 2 people could die, and I was like, is the author seriously gonna kill both of these people? Because mad respect. And they don't. And I didn't really like what happened with the one who lived, and I didn't really like what happened with the one who died. And finally, the writing of this book, it was serviceable. Sometimes I wished it had been a little bit more evocative, a little bit more... I could get an image of something in my head, but it always felt kind of bland. I wish it had evoked more imagery and been a little bit less telly and more showy sometimes. But those are my thoughts on A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Have you read it? What did you think about it? Leave a comment in the doobly-doo if you have any thoughts. Are there other sci-fi books that are accessible to a non-sci-fi reader like myself? Anyway, Jane was asleep on my lap, and I'm waking him up. And I will see you again next time with whatever it is we happen to be doing next time. Bye!